We have with us Mr. Percival Billimoria, senior advocate, who is known to have an extensive career as a senior advocate and arbitrator, appearing in some of India's most significant commercial and constitutional matters. Sir, your work reflects on how Indian constitutional law continues to evolve within globalized and yet deeply rooted civilizational framework. Coming straight to the question, sir, I would want to know how do you see the deliberation that we had today, which covered almost a span of topics from constitutional amendments to secularism to even the stray dogs matter that was taken up by the Supreme Court? How do you perceive such deliberations coming from the side of constitutional thinkers? And also, how do you see deliberations shaping up the Indian legal space?
Right. So one of the things that I had occasion to point out is it is delightful to know that we have a religious forum. I mean, it's a subsect of the Jain community taking up some of these issues, and I think Guruji has an encyclopedic knowledge of the constitution and its cases. And there are several debates, not just in India but internationally as well, whether a written constitution is better than an oral. There are many instances of oral constitutions. Whether a constitution should be flexible, so capable of amendment, and or whether it should be cast in stone. Now, here, of course, I admire. There's a jurist who is written on this subject, Justice Kalia of the U.S. Supreme Court, and I admire him greatly as an intellectual powerhouse. And I had occasion to mention that while it is almost a no-brainer that a constitution should also change with the times, the question that arises is: are there no merits of a static constitution? And I think there are. And if you want to know why, how exactly, please read his book on the subject. Coming back to our deliberations, I think India opted for a written constitution, well documented. There are a constituent assembly debates, which are often called upon to understand why a particular word or a phrase was used, in what context, and whether that context has now changed. And of course, secularism was built into the preamble by the 42nd Amendment, which, in my view, is not one of the best that we have seen. But be that as it may, it's in the Constitution that we are a secular nation. This gives rise to the question about what exactly does secularism mean. And if we again look at the international landscape, there is a vast arena of choices. In the US, for example, it means that you will not mix the state with the church. So you will not have, for example, any element of your religion or your religious uh, platform or fundamental of your religion. There are other European nations who say that secularism will mean that you can do whatever you want in the confines of your home, but just don't make a public display of that. And I think there was one very famous situation where the Sikh community, who are enrolled in the uh, British armed forces, whether they should be allowed to wear their turbans. And all this, if you read it, it makes for development of how these jurisprudences have evolved across. And I'm frankly delighted that this is what we are debating today in the Jain community. And of course, as I said, the leader of the Jain community he knows the constitution. He's
Right.
read it well, and he probably has a very good perspective on the amendments that were made, more than anyone else.
Right, right.
And the only way that we can evolve both as a nation and a society is to debate it, talk about these things openly, and ultimately the underlying philosophy that we have in India is Vasudev Kutumbakam.
Correct.
Uh, this actually means all creatures. It doesn't mean just all nationalities or all human beings. It means all creatures. And that would, of course, include animals as well. So, here I had a thought which I articulated, which is that, the original Western concept of animals has been man versus beast. So, you would have a normal family where it was not unusual to go hunting, which to my mind is a barbaric process. And but that's my belief. Now, if we divorce ourselves from our beliefs and take a look at how this evolved and what's going on, you understand that the belief system in those days was that animals are just beasts; they do not have a soul. That's how it started. Then there is a philosophy that even if they have a soul, it's an incomplete soul.
Right.
I mean, I don't know where that comes from, but it's part of the evolution. And then, obviously, biologically, they do not have the same characteristics. And I think now Western society is fixated on the notion that they do not have the power of reasoning, which is the exclusive domain of humans. But if you take animals, whether it's elephants who show great compassion, horses, horses are more intelligent than dogs, or dogs. So I'm saying dogs because it's a hot topic, and it's not unusual to have pet dogs. Anybody who has lived with a dog, who has interacted with a dog, will know that at some innate level, they are much more evolved. They get to know something in advance. So, for example, when I'm about 2 kilometers away from home, they start reacting differently. So, do they have distant vision? No, I don't think so. Right? Their eyesight may not be as good as their sense of smell.
Smell.
Can they smell me from 2 kilometers away? No, I don't think
Instinctive.
so. Right? But I think there is some extra sensory perception that animals have. All animals have that. They can sense danger, they can sense someone who cares for them and loves them. Where does that come from? So it just shows that these are sentient beings. And I was about to say that just because they are voiceless doesn't mean that they do not understand and cannot communicate. Now, for someone who doesn't understand dogs, this may sound a little off the rail, but talk to somebody who has lived with dogs, who has understood dogs, and understood and learned how to communicate with them. And then he will tell you that this is not some folklore or some eccentric belief. All animals have this ability. And I think as a humanity, we are missing something if we don't factor this in. I'm saying this because, the other interesting issue is the role of the media, because there are several fake stories that are going around. Now, the media is known as the fourth estate, the fourth pillar,
Of democracy.
you
Correct.
know, so parliament and judiciary and, as you know, so they are the fourth pillar of a democracy, which is fine. And if there was a situation where someone would try to curb media, I would be the first person to oppose that. But at the same time, I think it is true that the media in today's times does get a little carried away, and they lack a sense of responsibility. So, for example, to print stories saying dog bite, because you cannot have a free media that people rely on as an opinion forming mechanism.
Correct.
See, everyone knows that newspapers, अखबार में छापा था. So the people start believing कि अच्छा ये अखबार में छापा था तो सही होगा. Now consider what a media that does not fact check, present the correct picture, the damage that they are doing to their own credibility.
Very true.
Right? This credibility is being eroded. There will always be a few people who will believe what is printed. When you tell them it is not fact checked, they say, "Oh, come on, it's printed
So and so.
in the newspapers. News mein aaya." Right? But what do we now do about the media, print media or otherwise, which just picks up a story and then spreads a canard? So as far as dog dog issues are concerned, if the media would have it, and this was articulated before the Supreme Court, dogs kill children. I'm sorry, they do not kill children. Have you not heard the age-old adage that a dog will never bite the hand that feeds? So I think there is some diverse complexity here that we need to address without curbing the rights of the media to publish what they want. I think that would be very damaging in other sections of society, but at the same time, the media has to act responsibly.
Absolutely, sir.
And to spread a canard, in the same way as they are marketing a new brand of toothpaste, is just not acceptable.
Absolutely, sir. Totally agree with that point. With that, sir, we move to the next question, which is essentially on states' intervention under Article 25. How do you think we can strike a balance between individual freedom and states' power to intervene?
Right. So, Article 25 is religious rights, now part of the basic structure, which is good. The Constitution itself says that subject to public health, morality, now public order, right? So, there may be certain elements of a religion in terms of practices, and I think the Supreme Court has found the answer here to say that look, what is the essential practice of a religion? If they are looking at a matter, what is the essential practice? So, for example, is it the essential practice of a religion to pray in the streets? The first point I would make is that is the court itself well equipped to decide this? I would hesitate to say yes, but then question that arises: what is the alternative? So let's go with the yes. So, is it an essential practice to pray in the streets? And I would say no, it is contrary to public order. There will be another person who is also a citizen of India who would say it is absolutely necessary that I should pray at a particular time. And if I happen to be on the streets, I will pray in the streets. Is a judge of the Supreme Court going to decide whether it is an essential practice or not? And I think this is a very big poser. And of course, we've debated all along as to what is the exact meaning of secularism. Does it mean do what you want in your own home? Or does it mean that, you know, you can do anything you want in the name of religion? That is, of course, a very extreme example, which obviously you cannot. But then what are the constitutional limits? Public health, order and morality. In the Sabrimala case, Justice Bobde had framed the issues. So, whether morality includes constitutional morality. So, these are today some of the open questions that we are faced with. And I think it's extremely important to have an inclusive discussion of the likes that we had. And I would like to thank Guruji and the Jain community for this opportunity.
With that, sir, we move to just two simple rapid fire questions with which we expect instinctive answers of the guest. First one being, do you see India's legal system as a modern institution rooted in ancient wisdom or a Western transplant adapted to Indian realities?
The latter.
Right. And the second one is secularism in India a civilizational principle or a political construct?
See, if you look at our scriptures and our civilization, we've always been secular. I mean, the essence of Hinduism, for example, Jainism, Buddhism, the underlying point is tolerance for everything.
Right.
So, I think the concept of secularism is very ancient. It is very much there in our scriptures. Today, the debate is not whether it should be there, but what it should mean. Are there any boundaries? And if so, who decides? To me, that's a very fundamental question. Who decides? And if there are boundaries, how do we deal with it? Because there is obviously going to be a diversity of views.
Right.
And is it possible for us to be inclusive and have one, for example, one uniform civil code? Because that may not be palatable to some I'm not just talking about the majority and minority religions. I mean, there are many religions across India. There are many faiths. For example, Zoroastrianism. Now we have our own belief systems. So, in such a society, while I do believe in a uniform civil code, because it's the idea of Indianness. See, there is something after independence, a concept of what does it mean to be Indian.
Right.
That has grown, and I would like to encourage it to grow and progress. But these are the difficult questions that we must all be happy to talk about, to debate. I learned quite a bit from these debates, and I'm sure that there will be people who will also learn.
Right.
And that's the way society moves forward and evolves.
Absolutely, sir. With that, I would like to conclude our session for the
Thank you.
day. Thank you so much for your time, sir.